Public transport in the UK is gradually resuming normal service after Westminster loosened the country's coronavirus lockdown last week, despite fears that it may be difficult to enforce social distancing in spaces such as cramped train carriages. But was the British government right to ease lockdown restrictions so quickly? Our correspondent Daniel Rowell has more.
Train stations in the UK have taken steps to enforce social distancing as people aim to get back to work amid the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Westminster advised the British public to return to their jobs if possible last week, as part of measures to loosen lockdown restrictions. The messaging has since been criticised by the leaders of the devolved governments of Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, respectively. But should the British government have been more cautious about easing the UK's coronavirus lockdown? Journalist Stead gave his views on the matter.
We still know remarkably little about how the virus, how it transmits, whether you've had it more than once, you have immunity for 1 month, 6 months, a year, a lifetime, or at the other end of the spectrum, no immunity at all. We know so little about how it works. Or maybe it's like malaria, where it rests in your liver and resurfaces periodically for years to come. There's speculation about apparent scientific breakthroughs in the papers every single day, but there's still a huge amount we still need to learn about this COVID-19 virus and how it works. We're being told that good progress is being made with developing a vaccine. Even if a vaccine is developed tomorrow, and that is highly unlikely, we are realistically looking at a year before it gets through all the various testing stages and production is scaled up in a way the whole population can receive it. There were news reports earlier today of a rollout starting in September this year, but that does sound somewhat far-fetched when you look at the various safety checks that need to be put in place. And that's not to mention all the various cranky online conspiracies that people would be taken in by before we even get to that stage. And it's also worth bearing in mind that there's no vaccine for the common cold even after all these years. So with that in mind, we need to find new ways of living and working for many months, quite possibly years to come. And the consequences of this have not been explained in anything like the depth they should have been. Let's look at it logically. Just over a week ago, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that people should work from home if possible. And if that's not possible, they should avoid public transport and walk, cycle or travel by car. A very large number of people who would normally take a bus or a train to work will live too far away to walk or cycle, so they'll have no choice but to take a car. But this brings its own problems. In many British towns and cities, local councils have pursued anti-car policies for years. A lot of town centre car parks are privately owned anyway, and parking your car in a town or city centre may well end up costing you somewhere in the region of £25 per day. So that's £125 per week. Now, a lot of people simply can't afford that. Well, I think one of the main flaws of devolution has been that it is preventing a united UK-wide approach to dealing with the pandemic. I mean, it's particularly concerning in Wales, where you've got the Wales-England border is very different to the Scotland-England border, in that on the Wales-England border, a very large number of people live within a 20-mile radius either side of that border. And what we're seeing in Wales is that the vast majority of media people consume inside Wales comes from England, not from inside Wales. So a lot of people in Wales don't understand, should I be listening to Boris Johnson's advice or should I be listening to First Minister Mark Drakeford's advice? Is the lockdown over in Wales? Well, no, it certainly isn't. It's got at least another 2 weeks to run. But there is contradictory advice at a time when people need clear instructions.
Indeed, despite the optimism displayed by the likes of British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, it remains to be seen whether Westminster's decision to loosen the UK's coronavirus lockdown will prove effective. Daniel Rowell, Radio Sputnik.